What's up, everybody, and welcome to the second installment of Sunday Sala. Here, we slow things down a bit and talk about mental health, relationships, adulting, and faith. So, last week, we talked about self care, and I feel like part of taking care of ourselves is to manage our stressors. In today's episode, we'll talk about a common problem that most of us are encountering, whether consciously or unconsciously. So, this week I've been talking to several friends, and one common theme that came from that conversation was, why do we care so much about what other people think? That question led me to go back to another conversation that I've had with another friend several years back, wherein she kind heartedly told me that, Jessie, you know what? You are a people pleaser. I was silent for a while, but in my mind, I was replaying it over and over. I was resistant to accept that I am a people pleaser. But then this friend of mine highlighted certain scenarios that made me realize that she's absolutely right. And I started to analyze my relationships, whether platonic or romantic. And I realized that most of them didn't work, even though I tried so hard to make them work. I tried to change my preferences, morph into someone else, change my identity, even my beliefs, just so I would feel accepted and validated. I even tried to accommodate everything as much as I can, saying yes to everything, just so people would think of me as someone reliable and someone that they can go to every time they need help. I've settled in relationships where I had to walk on eggshells, be very cautious in the way I talk, the way I act, made myself smaller just so I would feel loved. And in some cases, I never stood up for myself because I didn't want to be left. It was exhausting to even think about and talk about it. And it was only when I accepted Christ as my Lord and Savior that I realized that I am fearfully and wonderfully made, that I'm created in His image, and that I'm chosen, and that my identity will never reside in this world or to anyone else's opinion, but it only resides in Him and how He sees me. It's a universal human desire to feel accepted, to fit in, and to gain the trust and respect of others. It is inked in our DNA. But the problem comes when that desire becomes so strong that it takes center stage, and our concern becomes what others think about us rather than what we think about ourselves. Wanting to be thought of positively isn't a bad thing. Let me just highlight that. We do need a little awareness of how others perceive us in order to be balanced and aware of how we affect others. But too much concern about what people think can lead us to value only what others want from us rather than what we desire and need. And the irony is that what started as an effort to ensure that we maintain good relationships and acceptance can end up doing the opposite. So there was an article posted on Psychology Today wherein it listed 5 ways on how we can get back to a healthier relationship with others and with ourselves. Let's start with number 1. Keep things in perspective. It's very common for us to somehow assume that we know what other people think. What we don't realize is that everyone is pretty much occupied with a lot of things in their mind. They also have their own insecurities, and on our end, we're just guessing. And those guesses actually stem from our own insecurities. What we normally do is we take what we don't like about ourselves and then place those thoughts on other people. When we catch ourselves thinking like this, let's try to pause and remind ourselves that we don't actually know what's in their head. And there is no reason to get us upset about something that we don't know to be true. I think I mentioned this in my past episodes that we're so good at creating this narrative in our heads, and sometimes the worst case scenario. What we fail to realize is that people are not really noticing, or they're not really paying that much attention because they have their own stuff going on too. And if there is really someone you think might be targeting you, they are most likely projecting their stuff onto you. The best way to deal with that is to just let it go and take the high road and have a bigger heart to understand where that person might be coming from. Again, they are most likely projecting their stuff onto you. So keeping things in perspective will definitely help. All right, let's go to number 2. Be aware of your thoughts. We have this inclination to people please, and sometimes they drive our own decisions. Before we know it, we are already adjusting our time, our schedules, our plans, even to the point of filtering everything, including our photos. So that's why it's very important to become more aware of our own thoughts and decisions. Because if we don't, they say an idle mind is a devil's playground. We must first recognize when we are being so dependent on what other people think before we can change it. And I know it can be hard to shake that feeling that if you get things right, then you will be loved and admired. That transactional and conditional thinking that if only you can get this done a little sooner or better, then people will admire you and like you. But that is just a fruitless pursuit. Not only because perfection is just an illusion, but because what people think about you has more to do with them than with you. Let's go to point number 3, and that is to ask yourself why. There is this stage in children or kids development wherein I think it's around 3 or 4 years old when the only question that they have is why. After each question you answer and there's a follow-up question, which is why. So every time that you are gonna have these thoughts and you're preoccupied with what someone else might think, dig into them to find out what's really going on. When I had that conversation with a friend, I started to look back again and realize that I behave that way. I became a people pleaser because of an incident that happened when I was young. I felt traumatized, and the stigma of rejection really hit me at the tender age of 11, that I realized that even though that happened a long time ago, that incident scarred me. And I became so scared of rejection, of not being liked, of not being wanted and loved. And so I made my way through relationships by doing everything in my power to be liked and to be accepted, not knowing that it wasn't healthy and I wasn't being authentic in my relationships. So ask yourself these questions. What exactly are you afraid of someone thinking? And more importantly, why? Why are you giving this person or this group of people that much control over your life, on your decisions or your preferences, on your beliefs and values? Why does it bother you? Keep asking yourself why for every answer until you get to the real root cause of the issue. It's never really about what someone else thinks of us. It's always about what we think of ourselves. Point number 4 is something that became a hard-earned lesson for me, and that is to be your own friend. The reality that we will never, ever be able to please everyone is somehow liberating. And when I accepted Christ, it was then that I realized that I only need to please an audience of one. People will always have something to say about the way we act, the way we talk, no matter how we try to be a good and better person, or how much we try to manage our relationships, there will always be a difference in opinion, a difference in belief and values and expectations. So, the brighter side of it is that no one else can do it either. So accept the twinges that will inevitably come when you realize you haven't made a connection with someone, and focus on a goal that will take you further toward being the kind of person you want to be, learning to like yourself, flawed and all. Another realization on this point is that sometimes the things that upset us, the things that we think other people might be thinking against us, we become upset because deep down we know that somehow there is truth in them. I remember being in a relationship before, and every time that I would meet up with friends and I would bring him along, there is this pang of panic or fear inside me, because I knew then that I was settling, that I was shrinking myself just to be with someone, just so I won't feel alone. And in my mind, I was thinking obsessively that my friends are thinking the same, or that they might be talking about it every time I'm not around. And those things upset me because I know deep inside that they're absolutely right. And this is where self love comes in. If we have a strong foundation, if we know where our identity rests, then we can be fully supportive of the decisions that we're making because our values are aligned with them. It doesn't matter what other people think, because we know in our core that we only need to please an audience of one, and that is God. And we no longer need any of that external validation. The last point is own your story. There is something liberating and freeing to be able to pursue the things that we love and enjoy without the fear of being judged. It's really important that we take hold of our own truth, like really own it and stand by it. Brene Brown highlighted this in one of her books. And Brene Brown, if you don't know her, she is a professor. She is a good storyteller. She has her own podcast as well. And she said this: you either walk inside your story and own it, or you stand outside your story and hustle for your worthiness. Self-value, self-worth are very important for us to realize what we desire and what we need, without getting caught up in worrying about the judgment from others. Let's stop those narratives of worst case scenario, but instead focus on the things that gives us joy and gives us peace. Remember who we are in Christ. Remember your identity and the price that Jesus had to pay for you to be able to have a new identity, freed, purified, cleansed, and righteous. Let us cultivate authenticity and not be conformed with the expectation, wishes, and wants of this world. Let us remember that true belonging only happens when we present our authentic self in this imperfect world. And our sense of belonging can never be greater than our level of self-acceptance. So, a thought bubble for you. Does judgment of others matter to you? What is the level of your self-worth today? What about your self-confidence? Let me know by using the hashtag #ConvosWithJ. And again, stay inspired, stay hopeful, wash your hands and practice social distancing. And as always, be kind to others and to yourself. That's it for this episode. I hope you learned a thing or two. I'll catch you again next time. Bye!